Hey everyone, it's Wednesday, June 18th, and about 30 minutes ago, Adobe just released the 2014 version of Adobe Muse CC. Now, the version numbers have seemed to kind of go away, but for those of you who are opening up the updated version, you'll notice it does say 2014 prominently, sort of in place of the version number, but this is the 8th version of Adobe Muse. So for those of you who see Muse 7 or 7 point something when you open it up, you are now an update behind as of about 30 minutes ago. So get that update done and your Adobe Muse will look like this. It is now darkened to match the appearance of the other Creative Cloud applications. Looks an awful lot like Photoshop and Illustrator now. This view, at least the color of this view, is preference based. You can go up to Adobe Muse CC, choose preferences, and the color theme gives you 4 choices now. So if you preferred the look of the old Muse, the second to last view is probably going to be the closest one. Personally, I prefer this newer, darker view. It's less distracting, doesn't take so much away from the content. So I want to talk to you guys about what's new, and from this video I will link out to more detailed tutorials as I create them. But the first big thing, aside from the appearance of Adobe Muse, is it is now 64-bit. It has been completely rewritten. Essentially, it was scrapped and rewritten to be extra fast to take greater advantage of your computer and the technologies that Adobe's been using on Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, etc. So now that we're dealing with 64-bit, you should have a smoother, faster experience with Adobe Muse. Everything should run a little more zippy, a little more responsive. I just want to give you guys a heads up though. The design canvas, when you're working in design mode, is not 64-bit. It's still built on Adobe Air, which doesn't mean a ton until you have an extremely complex document, and then you'll notice that moving things around on the canvas is not much faster than it was before. It's kind of similar to the way it was before. But for the most part, the interface now, no more flickering, no more lagging. Everything is lightning fast. It is a world ahead of Adobe Muse 7.0. So if you guys are all up to date, you'll probably be poking around looking for tons of new features, and to be perfectly honest with you, they haven't changed a ton as far as the features set goes. There are a few things that I consider significant. I consider the most significant thing to be the 64-bit rewrite, because everyone likes a faster performing application. But one of the other things to notice is a couple of things have been moved around. For instance, across the bar at the top, where we used to have our rectangle tool, our text box tool, that got moved over to the left. And that got moved over to the left, but you can now move that wherever you want, and you can move all of these panels wherever you want. That was kind of a sore spot with Adobe Muse 7. You couldn't open things up and collapse things down individually. You had to do essentially the entire tool panel at once if you wanted to squish it down into little buttons. So now, much like Photoshop, you can drag things around, make them their own separate panels. You could expand those panels from double-clicking the bar at the top, move them around, drag them over to a little sidebar here, expand that sidebar by double-clicking at the top, or compress it. So there's a ton of flexibility here. You can move things around wherever you want, separate them however you want, combine them however you want, just like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, etc. If you guys are unfamiliar with that, then maybe I'll do a tutorial getting more into detail with the interface, but please request in the comments so I've got a feel for how many people would like a tutorial like that. But you guys can pause this video and just glance at how I've set up my, panels over here on the right hand side. They are not the default setup, because the default setup hides some stuff. So I've rearranged things. So if you want to, you can pause this video. You can take a look at how I set things up. I have rearranged my panels many, many times, and this is pretty much what I've arrived at as being the best, most flexible setup. I've got my most commonly used tools most prominent on the screen, and those that I use less, of course, less prominent on the screen. So that's another one of the big features. We now have this customizable work area where we can move things around wherever we want. And one thing I didn't even notice at first, across the top where you have your tabs of your open panels here, I've got my my site map or my plan view open, and I've got this home page open. And if I wanted to now, this is a cool new feature, I can drag a tab to separate it into a separate window. And I can now put that on a second display if I had a second display connected right now, which I don't. But if I did, I can now use both displays at the same time, which can be hugely helpful. So that's part of that customizable work area feature. Another one, if you guys are working on MacBook Pros with Retina displays, the application has been rewritten for Retina displays. But much like the 64-bit aspect of it, the interface is Retina and 64-bit, but the canvas is not Retina. Now, before you guys think, okay, crap, now I can't design Retina display websites, you actually can. You absolutely can. For some reason, though, Raster Graphics, that's like images, logos, JPEGs, icons, things like that, those are displayed in standard resolution until you preview in the browser. When you preview in the browser, it becomes a Retina optimized image. But when it comes to building Retina display websites, that is a preference when you're creating your website. If you choose File, followed by Site Properties, and then make sure you're on the Content tab. It might start you off on the Layout tab, but go over to the Content tab at the top. You have the option here of setting the resolution to high DPI 2 times. So what it's saying is all of your images will be exported at double their normal height and normal width. So that way on a Retina display, it'll look the same size, but at that same size on a Retina display, there are 4 times more pixels because the display itself has double the height and double the width in terms of the number of pixels on the display. For those of you who aren't familiar with Retina displays or designing for Retina displays, I am going to do a detailed tutorial on that. But just so you guys know, you are designing in standard resolution unless you come in here and you set this Content tab to work at high DPI. And after you do that, you're going to want to be pulling in images that are double the height and width that you are designing at. So if you want something to fill the width of a 960 pixel website, you would have to go and do 960 times 2, and that would be the width of that object. So you gotta double everything up when you're working for Retina displays. And for those of you who have been visiting museresources.com, if any of you are on a Retina display, I've had the pleasure of beta testing this version of Adobe Muse for a while, so I have rewritten and relaunched Muse resources for Retina displays. So for those of you who are on a Retina display, you can check out the difference. Now, as far as the high DPI display support works, it's not just for Apple Retina displays, it's for any high DPI display. But technically those aren't really popular yet. But now wouldn't be a bad time to start designing things for Retina displays. You could probably even charge your clients a little extra premium for being on the cutting edge there. So they've designed this application to work much more like the other Adobe applications, and in doing so, they've made it run a whole lot faster. But there are a few new features that you guys will be excited about. One of the most requested ones that they've included in this release of Muse is the 100% page width slideshow, which I will definitely do a dedicated tutorial for. But you can now have a slideshow of a fixed height that now is elastic with your web browser. So as I make the browser bigger or smaller, I've got a 100% page width object that has a slideshow cycling within it. The slideshow was kind of tripping over itself because I was scaling the browser at the same time, but you could see it's the same smooth transitioning slideshows that we know and love, but now it's 100% page width. So I've wanted that for a long time. I know that you guys have as well, and I'll redo my tutorial that was previously a workaround for this and do a tutorial of how to do it in the latest version of Muse. Which kind of brings us to the next giant thing that they've added to Adobe Muse, and this is probably the biggest change for you and your clients and your relationship with your clients if you're designing for your clients. In-browser editing anywhere, in-browser editing, hosting anywhere. You no longer have to host your website on Business Catalyst to be able to change it on the web. So you're now able to go to inbrowserediting.adobe.com and you're able to edit the photos and text of your website through your web browser. So you can see here I've got Muse resources opened up, and I can go down here, shows this text box. It allows me to hover over it and edit it. And when I choose edit, it gives me a text box of unformatted text. And let's say I did a typo, or let's just say for instance that I want to sign this Love Joseph Angelo Todaro, and I'm going to hit update, and you can see that it's updated here, and when I hit publish, that update will get published to the website. Success, page saved successfully. So if I now go to museresources.com, let me go to the real Muse resources, here we go, do a little search there, Muse resources, it now says Love Joseph Angelo Todaro. That is live. I'm going to change that, so by the time you guys actually go and look at the website, it's not going to say that anymore. I'm going to change it right now. But the moral of the story is I can now use my own host, and personally I'm using Just Host, and I'll put a link in the description in case you guys are curious about good hosting with Adobe Muse. I use Just Host for all my Adobe Muse websites, and they give me unlimited websites to host, so I can have all my clients log in and be changing their websites through the web. So they don't have to be calling me up all the time saying, hey, can you change the price of this? Can you change the description of that? They can just do it themselves with little to no expertise. But I'll have a tutorial on that coming soon. So just to kind of sum things up, the new version of Adobe Muse is now 64-bit. The appearance has changed quite a bit. It's much more customizable, much more similar to the other Adobe applications. It's now a lot faster than it used to be, and that's really probably the key feature here. And the reason that the Muse team didn't add more features is because it is a lot of work to rewrite an entire application and make it 64-bit. I had the pleasure of discussing the progress with the developers as the beta program went along, and they worked their butts off. So I'm really appreciative for that. So we've got in-browser editing anywhere. We've got Retina Display support. We've got these 100% page width slideshows. Now if you use the preview mode instead of previewing in the browser, it uses your browser's technology in the preview mode. So preview is no longer a proprietary Adobe preview of your website. It's an actual web browser preview of your website. So that's much more useful and much more accurate than it used to be. So I've got a whole bunch of cool stuff coming soon. I'm going to be doing tutorials on all these individual features, getting really into detail. If you guys are wondering if it's worth watching the other tutorials that I have on Adobe Muse 7.0, just about everything, aside from my workaround for 100% page width slideshows, still applies. All of the things that you've learned about scroll motion, all the things you've learned about layout, and even the individual panels, it is the same. It is the same as it used to be, so you guys don't have to worry about relearning a whole bunch of stuff. So stay tuned. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. Check out museresources.com and download free stuff, and I will have more cool stuff coming soon.